Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Today, we're going to talk about the world of art as our programs for the month of March continue. And today, we're actually going to talk about three-dimensional art, not just two, like
you
paintings.
Like that.
Oh, I sure do.
I know.
Sculptures here.
Yeah.
Sculpture, of course, is a three-dimensional piece of art, but these particular sculptures will steal your breath away. Steal. Get it? You know, steal. Steel here is spelled S-T-E-E-L, which refers to the material steel, which is a combination of iron and something else. I forget right now. But in any case here, these are particular sculptures that aren't made from wood. They aren't made from concrete, but they're made from steel.
Wow. These sound kind of cool. It's something that I can't do, actually. I'm not very gifted with this kind of art. So we're going to talk about what they're making and why they're popular, who's making them. I haven't seen these myself. Have you seen them, Tom?
Well, actually, yes. Before the program, I checked them out online, and hopefully our magazine will contain pictures of these sculptures, and they are quite fascinating.
Cool.
And they are worth checking out. And if you are a sculptor yourself, you might be inspired. Let's listen to this article one time.
When we think of steel or wire, we often think of hard, lifeless images, buildings, bridges, or cars. What about fairies, though? Rather than follow the herd, one UK-based sculptor, Robin Wright, uses stainless steel wire to create fascinating and dynamic fairy sculptures. Unlike the stiff materials they're built of, these imaginary creations seem full of life and vitality. The fairies even appear to dance in the wind. To create such vivid structures, Wright is very thorough and detailed in his process. Wright forms the steel skeletons from the thickest wire available. The second thickest wire is used to sculpt the muscles and body mass. Then he wraps the finest wire around the skeleton to form the skin. Wright's personal signature is the stone heart buried within each fairy's chest. Sometimes Wright even carves messages into these hearts, giving life to the sculptures at their core. The imagination behind Wright's sculptures delights many people who remember reading and dreaming about fairies as children. A news story about fairies actually caused a sensation in the 1920s. Two girls from the village of Cottingley in England claimed that they had photographed fairies playing in their garden. Even though the news story was fake, it reminded Wright of a similar enjoyable experience. He had been trying out a new camera and took a picture of the woods from his garden. When looking through the pictures later, he thought he saw something that looked like a fairy sitting in the trees. Though he knew the figure in his picture wasn't real, it inspired him. Now he uses that inspiration to create his beautiful fairy sculptures.
Okay, everybody, it's time for us to discuss today's article in detail. Let's talk first about the title here. I did mention the word sculpture at the beginning of the program, but sculpture is a piece of art that is three-dimensional. The person who makes such a work of art is called a sculptor. And sculpture, of course, refers to both the work of art and this kind of expression in general. I could say, like, my cousin studied sculpture in university 20 years ago. But in this case here, we're talking about sculptures that will steal your breath away. Oftentimes in English, we use this phrase to take your breath away. If something is really so fantastic, so beautiful, so wonderful, you actually stop still in your tracks and breathe, or stop breathing. It takes your breath away. Our writer here is changing it to steal your breath away. And then, of course, she's also changing the word steal from S-T-E-A-L, which means to take something that doesn't belong to you. She's changing it to steal the building material made of iron and carbon and maybe some other materials that is used mostly in construction.
So when we think of steel or wire, wire, we often think of hard, lifeless images. Things that don't move. They're not very creative or playful. They're things like buildings and bridges or cars. Cars are more fun for guys at least. But what about fairies? Do you ever think about fairies when you think of steel or wire? I do if I'm watching a play on stage, because if fairies are on stage, they have to fly in the air and they need steel wires to hold them up, but you can't see them. They're so small. But that's on stage. We're talking about art that you can see. So the next sentence says, rather than follow the herd, one UK-based sculptor named Robin Wright, he uses stainless steel wire to create fascinating and dynamic little fairies. We're going to talk about those. Let's look at this phrase, to follow the herd. If you follow the herd, a herd is a group of cattle or a group of sheep. It's a big group of animals, and they all stick together. If you follow the herd, you do what everybody else does. So he wants to be unique. He doesn't want to do what everybody else does. He does his own thing. So he's come up with something very unique.
Yes, he's a sculptor based in the United Kingdom, England or Scotland or Wales or someplace like that. And he uses stainless steel wire to create these fascinating and dynamic fairy sculptures. Fairy, of course, is 仙女 in Chinese, and we have fairy tales in English for kids, usually, like, Robin Hood. Oh, no, that's not a fairy tale. I was thinking of Little Red Riding Hood. That's a fairy tale. But in any case here, stainless means that it won't rust. Okay, oftentimes when we buy silverware, we want stainless steel, so this wire is not going to rust. And these are fascinating sculptures. Fascinating means they are really wonderful. They're like fantasy. They really stick out and we go, wow, when we see them. Fascinating. Dynamic means they're very unusual and they're something that someone hasn't really been doing before.
And they also look like they're moving. If it's dynamic, it just moves. Even if it's still in real life, it looks like it's moving. The way he shapes his sculptures, it does look like they're in motion.
But I don't technically think they are moving. If they are actually moving, then that would be kinetic sculpture. They might be blowing around in the wind a little bit, but here I think the author is using the word dynamic to talk about something that looks like it's moving or is very special and unique and changes, or it's very different from before. Now, let's move on to the next sentence here. It says, unlike the stiff materials they're built of, these imaginative creations seem full of life and vitality. So usually when we think of steel, we think it's stiff. Something stiff when it doesn't really move, okay? And stiff, of course, again, is something that can't move, like maybe your muscles. After you've worked out too much, the next day they're going to feel kind of sore and stiff. Okay, so yes, indeed, unlike these stiff materials, or unlike the stiff materials they're built of, these imaginative creations seem full of life and vitality. So yes, they are built of steel. You could say built from steel. That's correct as well. These are imaginative creations. Imaginative, which means they involve the imagination, showing a lot of creativity.
And they've got a lot of life to them. They seem like they're full of life and vitality. If you're vital or you're talking about something that has a lot of vitality, that thing's really strong, active. There's lots of energy there. You know, someone who just moves around really slowly and doesn't have a lot of energy, isn't very vital and full of life. You want some vitality. Kids have a lot of vitality, that's for sure, and so do fairies. And so he wanted his sculptures to look the same way. His fairies, if you see pictures of them, and Tom and I both have, they actually appear to look like they're dancing in the wind. Even though they are stiff, they're made out of steel, they're not actually moving. They look like they're in motion. They're really fun.
They do sound like a lot of fun. I wish we had some here in Taiwan. Who knows? Maybe he'll come to Taiwan and set up a couple of exhibitions or something. Now, to create such vivid structures, or structures that are so full of vitality and full of life, Wright is very thorough and detailed in his process. If you're thorough, that means you complete a lot of steps, you have a lot of details, you don't leave anything out. Okay, of course, we like workers to be thorough. Otherwise, they're going to be kind of careless and some things won't get done and something will fall apart. So, yes, indeed, if you're going to work hard, you should be very thorough.
That's very, very important. Notice that when we read this word detailed out loud, it's not detailed. This is pronounced detailed, thorough and detailed in his process. If you're detailed in your process, you take a lot of time with very small things. You're not just kind of sloppy and rushing through things. He's very careful. Wright forms the steel skeletons from the thickest wire available. Notice we're going to be talking about different weights and different thicknesses of wire that he uses. We're going to talk about the thickest wire first because that's what he uses to form the skeleton of his fairy. A skeleton is the internal framework of bones that our bodies all have. Once we die and we're buried, eventually all that's left of us is the bones. And bones actually last quite a few years after we're gone. That's what he uses his thickest wire for. If something's available, you can get your hands on it. You can purchase it. It's not something that's impossible to find. We're going to talk more about how he goes through this process of creating his imaginative creatures, you could say. But first, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 今天我们要看的呢，是用这个不锈钢来雕塑这个雕塑品 sculptures. 我们首先来看到在第一段的第三个句子提到 Rather than follow the herd, one UK-based sculptor, Robin Wright, uses stainless steel wire to create fascinating and dynamic fairy sculptures. 在这里呢，我们首先来看到 rather than 就是有取代而不是的意思，而如果我们讲到 follow the herd， 其实就是有从众或者是跟随潮流的意思。有时候你也会看到它的写法叫做 follow the crowd。那么这位英国的雕刻家叫做 Robin Wright， 他并没有随波逐流，而是使用不锈钢丝线Stainless steel wire 来呢创造出一些非常迷人又富有生气的精灵雕塑。我们在这里来看一下 dynamic 这个形容词，就是有动态的或动力的意思。后面的句子提到 Unlike the stiff materials they are built of, these imaginative creations seem full of life and vitality.跟一般我们所看到的非常僵硬的原料是不太一样，在这里 stiff 是有僵硬的意思。其实这些呢富有想象力的创作品呢是充满了生命跟活力。我们来看一下 imaginative 这个形容词，在这里解释成为富有想象力的，像是 an imaginative writer 指的就是一个充满想象力的作家。跟它长得很像的另外一个形容词 imaginary 则是解释成为虚构的幻想的意思。举例来说，这本书里面的人物全部都是虚构的，你就可以写 All the characters in this book are imaginary。 要注意这两个形容词的不一样。而他所雕塑的作品 creations 是充满着 life and vitality。 vitality 在这里指的就是活力跟生气的意思。它的形容词也很重要， vital 可以解释成为呢生气勃勃的意思。接着来看到第二段的第一个句子提到 To create such vivid structures, Wright is very thorough and detailed in his process. 要用呢不锈钢来做雕刻艺术，而且他的呢作品是像在风中起舞的精灵，所以要做出这么 vivid structures 生动的结构，他就必须要在过程当中非常的 thorough， 在这里有周密的、完善的意思，而且还要非常的 detailed， 是非常精细的。Thorough 是一个很重要的形容词，我们来造个句子。The doctor was very thorough in his examination of the sick child. 代表着就是医生对生病的孩子进行了非常仔细的检查。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue talking about the steel sculptures of Robin Wright, a UK-based sculptor. Now, we're talking about the materials he uses for his sculptures, at least one particular material, stainless steel wire. You could also say wires. Wire just refers to the material, whereas wires, countable, just refers to the individual wires themselves.
Yeah.
Now, where we left off, we said that he's very thorough, very detailed in his process. First of all, he forms the skeletons of his sculptures with the thickest wire available, the thickest wire possible. Okay, so it's pretty thick there for the base of the sculpture, the skeleton. And then the second thickest wire is used to sculpt the muscles and body mass. So I guess the original wires are kind of thick, you could say, and then they get kind of smaller or thinner as he moves out from the skeleton. So he puts the muscles on and the body mass, which would include, the muscles, maybe the stomach or maybe the organs and stuff like that. He uses less thick wire there, and then he wraps the finest wire around the skeleton to form the skin. If you wrap something around something, you just take that thing and go in circles around that thing so that it touches the surface. For example, you might wrap
a Christmas gift, right?
Yeah. I was trying to think of wrap string around something. Or...
Yeah. Well, when you wrap a package to send it in the mail, you take a piece of paper and you cover the outside of it, or you enclose something in that paper. Here he's enclosing his sculpture in a very fine wire, and that actually makes up or forms the skin of his cute fairies. Now, Wright's personal signature is the stone heart. Notice we've got it in quotation marks. It's not a real heart. Kind of looks like a heart. He's got the heart buried within each fairy's chest because his fairies have a lot of love and heart within them, a lot of care. Now, if you have a signature, it means you're known for something that you do in particular. For example, you might have a signature move to the basket if you're a basketball player, so that when you do it, everybody goes, oh yeah, that's how he always does his slam dunks. Or maybe you were familiar with Michael Jackson. His signature dance move was to walk backwards, that moonwalk, or he wore one glove instead of two. That was a signature design or costume style that he had. So his personal signature as an artist is to actually put a little stone heart within each fairy's chest. Notice we're saying here it's stone. It's not made out of wire.
Yes, it's made out of stone here. It's buried within each fairy's chest. It's kind of his unique little signature. Actually, your signature is when you sign your name on a document, but as Stephanie just said, it also means something that refers to the unique way you do something or something like that. So, indeed, that kind of lets us know that this is his work of art. If you see that stone heart inside the chest of each fairy. Now, sometimes Wright even carves messages into these hearts, giving life to the sculptures at their core. The core is the very middle of something, like the Earth's core, the very central part of the Earth.
Yeah, your core of your body is where you... I guess your chest and your stomach. And if you strengthen your core, guys, when you're doing exercises, it means you strengthen that stomach muscle so that you stand taller. I think it helps your health. That's what I've heard.
Your body, your muscles, and helps you live longer and be happier.
Strengthen your core.
Strengthen your core. Yeah, sometimes people say doing sit-ups or planks or things like that.
I do those.
Will help you strengthen your core. But this is at the core of the sculptures. The hearts sometimes carved with messages into them, little messages that tell us some information about something. Now, moving on to the next paragraph here, it says, the imagination behind Wright's sculptures delights many people who remember reading and dreaming about fairies as children. So I guess most of us could relate to these sculptures if we've read about fairies. Fairy tales, of course, include a lot of fairies in them. Not always, but at least in Western culture, fairies are a big part of, those kinds of stories. They appeared in Disney movies and stuff like that, like Tinkerbell, for example.
She's a fairy.
And Peter Pan is a fairy, so she got those little light feathery wings and stuff like that. So, of course, that's the reason why these sculptures delight people. If something delights you, it makes you feel very happy.
Now, back in history, in the 1920s, there was a news story about fairies that actually caused a sensation. When you're talking about a news story that causes a sensation, it means everybody's talking about it. Wow. There was a lot of news. There was a lot of chatter about it. Everybody thought, oh, wow, did you hear about that story? There's a lot of sensation that's going on. Well, these two girls from the village named Cottingley in England, they said they had actually photographed fairies playing in their garden. Notice we use the verb claim. They claimed they had done this. Someone claims something, they say it's true, but there's no evidence that it is true. They just want you to believe it. Well, it turned out, of course, that the news story was fake or false. If something's fake, it's not real. Even though that happened, it actually reminded Wright of a similar enjoyable experience he'd had in his own life.
Indeed, and I'm imagining here that maybe these photographs were like double exposures, for example.
Maybe, yeah.
So when you looked at the picture, it looked like the actual fairies were transparent and you could see through them and stuff like that. Maybe they didn't quite understand what double exposures were back in the day. But yes, indeed, the story was fake. But it was still an enjoyable experience, and so he knew about this, and he had been trying out a new camera and took a picture of the woods from his garden. So there you go, there's a reference to photography again. Cameras can play tricks with our eyes. You can create some pretty wild scenes using special effects, especially nowadays with digital cameras. So he bought a new camera. They're coming out with new cameras all the time, and when you want to test it or get used to it or figure out how to use it, we say you try it out. I just bought a new smartphone and I want to try it out. I don't quite know how to use it. I'm not familiar with the OS, so I'm trying it out.
Well, he was trying out his new camera and he took a picture of the woods from his garden. Well, when he was looking through the pictures later after he developed them, he thought he saw something that looked like a fairy sitting in the trees. Notice he is in his own garden, and from his garden there must have been a forest near his home, and we're calling it the woods, right? So he took a picture from his garden, and from far away, it looked like that there was a fairy sitting in the trees when he was looking at his photos later on. Sometimes our eyes trick us. Sometimes it actually looks like that based on other things that are in the photo. So kind of magical. He knew the figure in his picture wasn't real. He knows that fairies aren't real. They're part of our imagination. But still, just seeing this kind of inspired him. And as an artists need this kind of inspiration to produce their artistic works, and this is what really inspired him to begin designing fairies.
Indeed, and of course I know somebody who is inspired by people that he sees in the MRT. He's down there all the time drawing pictures of them because he's inspired by the people down there. In this particular case, though, our sculptor here was inspired by that picture of a fairy that he took. But again, as you said, he didn't really think it was a fairy, but he thought, well, it's close enough. You know, it looks like a fairy. That looks kind of cool. And I remember when I was a kid reading fairy tales. I know other people probably remember those fairies as well. So I'm going to create some sculptures that kind of look like what I saw in that photograph. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I was saying to Tom earlier that maybe he had little kids, especially little girls, and maybe they liked to hear fairy tales. And, you know, all of this kind of led to him being inspired to go in this direction. So now he's really famous for creating really unique and fascinating fairy sculptures. I've never seen anything like this before, especially made out of wire. So if you have the chance, even if you can't get to England to see one in real life, check them out on the internet. They're pretty amazing, and they'll make you feel kind of young at heart again. We're going to listen one more time right now to our Chinese teacher.
第二段要描述的就在看这个雕刻家是怎么样的来雕塑他的作品。我们来看一下第二段的倒数第二个句子。Wright's personal signature is the stone heart buried within each fairy's chest. 它最经典的独特标志呢，就是深埋在每一尊精灵雕塑胸膛当中有一个石头之心。在这里 signature 本来是有签名的意思，不过在这里指的就是独特标志或者是特征。我们常常提到某人的 signature style， 指的就是他的独特风格。第三段的第一个句子提到The imagination behind Wright's sculptures delights many people who remember reading and dreaming about fairies as children. 其实呢，怀特雕塑作品背后的想象力 delights many people。在这里的主词最主要的 key word 是 imagination， 动词 delight 使某人高兴跟愉悦。举例来说，小丑呢逗乐了观众。The clown delighted the audience. 因为呢，看到他的作品，大家就想到在孩童时期所读过或者是幻想过的精灵。而呢，在这里我们看到中间提到两位来自英国小镇的少女呢，她们的故事使这个雕塑家有了一些灵感。在文章的最后两句提到 Though he knew the figure in his picture wasn't real, it inspired him. 虽然后来发现照片里面的人影并不是真正的精灵，但是却给了他灵感。在这里的 inspire 当作动词，有给予灵感的意思。我们来造一个句子。美丽的景色使得作曲家灵思泉涌，我们就可以说 The beautiful scenery inspired the composer. 而后面一句提到 Now he uses that inspiration to create his beautiful fairy sculptures. 那么他就使用这样子的灵感 inspiration 来创造他美丽的精灵雕塑。 Inspiration 在这里是用名词的方式来表达，就有灵感的意思。你如果说 I cannot write without inspiration， 代表着就是没有灵感，我写不出东西来。以上就是今天的课文解说，谢谢收听。
That brings us to the end of our article for today. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you will be inspired by the steel fairy sculptures of Robin Wright, that sculptor based in the UK. From all of us here at English Digest, my name is Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.